Hi, parents of juniors. We are excited to talk to you about the walkabout process. Typically, this is something that we would have done in the beginning of the junior school year, but because of the limitations of COVID, we are bringing to you now a brief presentation. Keep in mind that this is an overview of some things to be thinking about right now as your juniors are finishing up this year and moving into the summer and then the fall, of course, with walkabout planning. Again, my name is Jen Kubina, and I've got Amy Bowman here. And we will be serving as the Walkabout advisors to the senior class and helping them through the Walkabout process.
All right, so we'll be talking about, we'll go through an overview and a process briefly. Again, like Jen said, we'll go over in more detail in the fall. So we'll just start with an overview of what Walkabout is. If we can move on to the next slide.
Okay.
So Walkabout, it takes place, hopefully by now you guys have heard enough about it that you know what's coming in terms of big picture, but it is 2 8-week-long full-time volunteer internships. So this takes place during second semester of this every senior's school year. So instead of taking classes at Linworth, Thomas, or Kilbourne, they are doing these internships full-time to earn credit instead of taking traditional classes to earn credit. It's an alternative to that typical second semester of senior year where our students are burnout and just ready to get out of there. So this is meant to be a time of learning kind of the next step to help them during that in-between phase of the real world outside of school, K through 12 school. So it is driven by student interest. So what we mean by that is it's not a canned program in the sense that we have a list of placements that we plug students into every year. Instead of that, we start by asking our students what their interests are and what they hope to do for Walkabout. And we try as hard as we can to line it up as closely to their interests as possible.
And I'll just add that, Linworth juniors didn't have the advantage of doing the traditional interim. And sometimes the interim this year, and I guess the previous year, and sometimes interim does fuel some interest and thinking in terms of what kids can start thinking about for a walkabout. And so as parents, it just might behoove you to have those discussions now in terms of, hey, what are your interests? What could you likely see for a walkabout experience? All right, and some things that you should know. Walkabout is a full-time commitment. What this means is it's about 30 hours per week for each of the 8-week sessions. And students will be earning 1.5 credits per quarter, which equals 3 semester credits. In addition to the daily and weekly hours that are required, students are required to write daily reflective journals to a member of the staff who they've requested, that interaction with. By doing so, students earn English credit in the form of a fourth of an elective per quarter. So they're earning general credit for the walkabout and an English elective credit for the journal writing. In addition to the hour requirements and journal requirements, the students who are in town will be required to meet up with us every week for a seminar. Seminar is an opportunity for students to share their experiences and work out any issues that might be coming up in these new and less familiar environments. Another key thing about Walkabout is communication. Students need to be in constant communication with us. That's in the form of emails and text messages, and obviously just face-to-face conversations. Amy and I require a 24-hour feedback from students. And that is because some of the stuff that we're working with is sensitive to time. If we're hearing from a potential walkabout mentor and we need to secure an interview or pass through a resume or something like that, that can all be time sensitive. And as adults who have experience with with time sensitive things. We know that the urgency isn't so fresh in our students' minds. So communication is something that we will um, really continue to stress during this time, and that actually starts now, and from the end of the junior year all the way through the end of the walkabout process, communication is key.
So why Walkabout? And we touched on this a little bit already. It is a great opportunity for our students to make the transition from, the high school phase of adolescence into adulthood. And of course, it's just a small glimpse, but what a valuable glimpse it is for them. This opportunity gives our students real world experiences, and those experiences demand levels of maturity that they are just not used to displaying. They haven't had to up until this point on Walkabout. So our students are used to, for their whole life, they've been told to be in school at a certain time on certain days doing certain tasks. And so this experience gets them out of that and something they're interested in. Operating and functioning at a level of maturity that they just haven't been asked to do yet in school. So it's hard for our students. It's uncomfortable for our students at times, but those experiences in the real world are what are producing the growth that we love seeing at the end of these walkabout experiences. So it's just really great to see our students at the end of May come back. We can just see how much they've grown and what they've learned. So it's valuable, and our students walk away with really valuable connections from their walkabout mentors and people they've come in contact with. Sometimes connections that lead to future opportunities, summer jobs, jobs down the road, maybe even just having those connections in a career field that they're interested in. So it is, we see firsthand every year the growth that takes place, the value in the program, and we believe in it so much that, we keep doing it year after year. So these are the reasons why we do it, that we want parents and students to be thinking about, even though it's uncomfortable and even though there are unpredictable things in terms of the planning process, to keep in mind the value of that.
All right, so here's just a quick timeline of the things that will be coming your way and your students' way during senior year. Typically in late August, we have a senior retreat, and that's where we start the process of what the walkabout planning looks like in terms of what Amy and I do and what the students do. At the senior retreat, the students will submit an application for walkabout, and that's how we know that that student is intending to go through the entire process and make that commitment. In early September, then once we have the walkabout applications and a general idea of what some of the kids are, or what all of the kids are thinking, then Amy and I will have a group of kids who we will meet with individually. And when Amy said that walkabout isn't canned, we don't just pull from a list of experiences that we've had in prior years. That's what we're talking about here, where we really have conversations with students to start understanding their hopes for each of the 8-week experiences. This is where we ask about any opportunities that the student might have to go out of town, or at least the desires that they might have to go out of town. And even in town experiences, we just start going over possibilities. It's during these conversations that we start thinking or putting in the minds of kids things like, do you have a driver's license? Are you going to have reliable transportation? If you're desiring to go out of town, have you had conversations with your parents about where that can be and what their safety parameters are? So we start having those conversations. Once we have a general idea of what students and parents are hoping for, then you can see September through December is a planning time for Amy and I. We literally start making contacts almost the day after we meet with the kids to potential mentors and mentoring organizations. When we get somebody who says, yeah, think that we can make this work, then we start in interviews. And interview isn't in the sense that it's a make or break situation. Typically, it's more of a getting to know you. So we take the student into this new environment and we discuss, who they might be working with and what the placement might look like. So there's just some familiarity. Once then the walkabout is finalized, you can see there in December and January, that's when we ideally like to have them all finalized so that we can all go on winter break and have a nice relaxing time. But during between actually finding the placements and securing the interviews and then leaving for winter break, the students then are charged with writing a proposal, which is basically an extended permission slip where they outline their goals and their objectives, their rationale for spending this time out of school. So you can see we're hard at work for that first part of senior year. And again, this is where a lot of the communication comes in play. We're just making sure that students, parents, and walkabout advisors are all on the same page so that we're not, Amy and I aren't spending a lot of time making unnecessary contacts, and that we can make sure that we get the right experience for your kiddo.
So this slide, this is the same slides that we used with seniors this past fall and talk with them and their parents about Walkabout this year that we're currently. And so we did talk about some considerations regarding COVID. So we are in a much better place than we were, last August and September. So just be open-minded considering COVID and understand that may place limitations in certain fields, like the medical fields. Just we ask parents and students to be open-minded, knowing that things are just not the same. I think we're all used to that by now. But some important conversations that these are the things we want parents and our juniors right now to be thinking about and talking about, like Jen said, with each other, parents and students having discussions with each other. We want the students to start thinking about their hopes and ideas and communicating that to parents so that you can have the conversations about what is realistic and what may not be realistic for your student. So like, Mom, I want to travel to Zimbabwe. That's not an option. No. So having those conversations now so that everyone can find the path that will work for each student. Parent guidelines and boundaries. Obviously, Jen and I will not push for anything that parents are not comfortable with. So if a student is saying, well, if you find a placement for me in Zimbabwe, maybe then my parents will allow it. We are not going to go down that route without parents' approval ahead of seeking out a placement. So start talking about travel, start talking about budget. That's the question that Jen and I ask our students right off the bat. How much money do you have to spend on these 8 weeks? And so having those conversations is super helpful to us since we know what's realistic and what's not in terms of budget, and backup plans. So have those ideal things in mind, and we'll certainly shoot for those. And then some other plans beyond those, because we know that things don't always work out the way that we hope they will. So another thing that it goes under the travel bullet point was that driver's license. So we know it's not realistic for every single student to have their driver's license and a vehicle for their senior year during Walkabout. But if it is an option and it's realistic, start the process now. So that's not a quick process. You can't just go get your license overnight. There's a lot of planning involved in terms of the classes that need to be taken, the in-cars, the hours. So start that process now if it's an option for your student. It will open up doors for them if they can transport themselves to and from a placement. If a student doesn't have a driver's license, that's fine. We will work to find them a placement on a bus line. So that definitely reduces the number of options that a student may have if we're restricted to a bus line or to somewhere where a parent or a family member can pick them up and drop them off every day. But you do have to be a little more open-minded with your options when we're limited to a bus line. So get those driver's license if that is an option.
All right. These are certainly things that we discuss with the students closer to the walkabout experience, but Um, we need to consider that the way that students dress maybe for school isn't always appropriate for the way that the walkabout placement wants the students to dress. Obviously, each placement is different, and so we'll make sure that the students are aware of the setting that they're entering and that they know what is acceptable. Amy has already touched on transportation, but this really can limit the placement depending on what the transportation situation is. So if we can get that driver's license. The key to Walkabout is that it's 50-50 service for learning proposition. The student is entering these placements in the hopes that they learn things about the career or area of interest. And in addition, they are providing service for the mentoring organization. We want the students to attend every day with enthusiasm, ready to work, ready to learn, being engaged. We're fortunate that, this is typically the way we run school, and most of our kids are already doing that. They're already accountable and advocating for themselves and seeking out ways to provide service around here. Sometimes, though, we need to remind the students that that's what Walkabout is too, and that they're not going to come in and run the organization the way in their teenage brains they might be. That's going to take time to and just a lot of learning and understanding and doing some of the more menial tasks in order to build up responsibility to the point where they feel like they are contributing and really a part of a group. Oh gosh, there's that communication word again. I don't know if we need to really talk about that. Communication between students and parents, between students and walkabout advisors, between students and walkabout mentors. And then of course, when we have the opportunity to be in seminar, communication is just about experiences and helping one another through what might be difficult or unfamiliar territory. Staying open-minded throughout the planning process of Walkabout and during the Walkabout is really key. Our expectations can let us down and cause disappointment, but if we continue to stay open-minded, then that's where real learning and growth can happen. Being okay with changes and possibilities that we didn't quite consider can really lead to some of the best moments and experiences.
So these dates are, again, for our current year. So we will have an updated slide, updated dates for you in the fall. And we'll go over all these more specific details for you and your student in the fall. But thank you for watching this video, listening to this video. We just want everybody to have sort of something to be thinking about as we quickly approach the senior year for our next group of students. We will send an invite to have you here at Linworth for a senior parent night where we will go into the walkabout process in more detail since it will be right in front of us at that time. And Laura will also be there that night in the fall to discuss the college application process with all of you. So, and answer all the questions that you'll have about that. So a big year coming up. So we're just trying to get geared up and prepared for that as best as we can. Thank you so much. And we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.